Welcome to Global Politics Today. You know, when you look at the global landscape today, it feels less like some calm, predictable sea, doesn't it? More like this vast, ever-shifting ocean.
Definitely. Alliances are constantly being tested. Currents change fast.
Exactly. And right now, well, there's some pretty substantial stormy waves brewing between Washington and New Delhi. And we're not just talking about the usual stuff, imports, exports, the balance sheet. No, this feels like a much deeper, more complex story.
It absolutely is. There's a lot more going on beneath the surface.
So our deep dive today is going to focus squarely on the intricate geopolitics behind what we're calling the India-U.S. trade storm.
Right.
It's really a narrative about power dynamics, isn't it? Influence and maybe at its core, a hard look at America's evolving position on the global stage in the 21st century.
That's a great way to frame it. Power, influence, and America's role. That's key.
Our mission today really is to unpack not just, the specific items on the negotiation table for these two giants.
Which are important, of course.
Absolutely. But more importantly, we want to try and uncover what's truly at stake for the future global order itself. Because, you see, this isn't just an economic issue, right? It's not just trade stats.
Not at all. It's a complex, high-stakes geopolitical chess match.
Played out right in front of us. And every move could potentially reshape things for decades.
Precisely. The ripple effects are potentially huge.
So to really get a handle on where we are now, I think we have to look back. The history here, especially the economic history between India and the U.S., it's quite a story of transformation.
Oh, absolutely. Dramatic transformation.
So maybe start us off there. What did that relationship look like, say, during the Cold War era, trade-wise?
Well, it's fascinating how far things have come. For most of the Cold War, India's whole economic and political setup kept it pretty distant from the U.S. as a trade partner.
Okay.
You're talking about a nation deeply committed to a socialist economic model. Think pervasive state control, heavy industrialization, maybe not focused on consumer goods, and crucially, really intense protectionism.
Protectionism, like high tariffs.
Threats.
Exactly.
Yeah.
High tariffs, import quotas, strict licensing. It made it incredibly difficult for foreign companies, especially American ones, to even get a foot in the door.
Right. And politically. They weren't exactly aligned with the West either, were they?
Not at all. India's international ties during that period were strongly aligned with the Soviet Union. And this wasn't just, political or military nodding. It ran deep into their economic ties, too.
Okay.
India got significant economic aid, technology transfers, military gear from the USSR. So naturally, this close relationship meant New Delhi was, well, pretty far from Washington's inner circle when it came to trade.
So there was a sort of ideological divide that impacted everything.
A fundamental one, yes. India operated within its non-aligned framework, but often ideologically leaned away from Western capitalism. It influenced almost every aspect of their, lack of interaction on the trade front. So if I'm hearing you right, India was basically operating in its own kind of highly regulated, somewhat insulated economic bubble for a lot of that time, largely disconnected from the global market in the way the U.S. saw it.
That's a really good way to put it. Their philosophy prioritized what they called import substitution industrialization and self-sufficiency. Very inward-looking.
Okay.
And that inherently limited the scope for big trade partnerships with capitalist economies like the U.S. There's some diplomacy, sure, maybe a little trade, but minimal, not driven by the kind of economic interdependence or strategic alignment we see, or at least aim for, today.
Like two ships passing in the night almost.
On the economic front, pretty much.
Yeah.
Two parallel tracks that rarely cross in a meaningful way.
But then, 1991, that year comes up again and again. A massive turning point for India, a real moment of reckoning, it sounds like.
Oh, absolutely pivotal.
They faced this severe economic crisis that basically forced them to rethink everything. Can you paint a picture? How bad was it?
It was existential, truly. The country was right on the brink of defaulting on its external debt.
Wow.
Its foreign exchange reserves plummeted down to just a few weeks' worth of imports. Inflation was spiraling. It was a balance of payments crisis like they'd never seen.
I heard they had to physically move gold.
They did. They literally had to airlift their gold reserves to pledge them as collateral to the IMF just to secure an emergency loan. That's how dire it was.
Incredible. And that crisis, that necessity, became the catalyst for change.
It forced their hand. It compelled India to launch sweeping economic reforms,
Yeah.
dismantling decades of those protectionist policies we talked about.
Mm.
They devalued the rupee, started privatizing state-owned companies, and crucially began opening their markets to the world. And that moment of crisis in India, well, it suddenly presented a new, pretty significant opportunity for the U.S. and other economies.
A forced pivot, really, from isolation to integration.
Born out of pure necessity, yes.
And the U.S. started to engage more then. That opportunity was seized, maybe slowly at first.
Gradually, yes. The changes India made were huge, tearing down those old walls. It created the fertile ground for trade with the U.S. to finally start climbing.
So by the early 2000s, say a decade after 91, what do the numbers look like? Were they starting to show promise?
They were. We saw definite growth. By the early 2000s, trade between the two countries hit around $20 billion a year.
Okay, $20 billion.
No.
Still sounds small compared to today, but significant then.
Absolutely. Compared to the almost dormant state before, it was a big jump. It signaled real, growing engagement, moving beyond just diplomatic handshakes to actual economic ties. That period really laid the groundwork, building some trust, getting the business communities familiar with each other.
Fast forward to today, the growth is just explosive, almost unrecognizable from that $20 billion.
It really is. It's been exponential. From that $20 billion, the figure has skyrocketed. We're talking over $190 billion today.
Wow, nearly tenfold.
Exactly. It shows the immense growth and just how important this economic relationship has become. It's a real testament to the potential that was unlocked by India's reforms, and maybe the U.S. finally recognized the scale of India's market.
And what kind of things are we trading? What does that $190 billion actually represent?
Oh, it's fascinatingly diverse now, showing real economic interdependence. From the U.S. side, think about crucial pharmaceuticals coming from India.
Right, the pharmacy of the world idea.
Precisely. Everything from generic drugs that help lower healthcare costs here to specialized vaccines. India is huge in that space. Plus, a massive amount of America's IT services, software development, customer support, back office stuff outsourced to India. It's kind of indispensable to the U.S. tech ecosystem now.
And what's going the other way? What does India buy from the U.S.?
India's importing sophisticated advanced machinery, which is vital for its growing manufacturing sector. High-tech aircraft parts, too, for its aviation and defense industries. And you also see a lot of agricultural products moving from the U.S. to India, things like almonds, pulses, specialized grains. It's not just raw materials, it's high-value goods and services supporting both economies.
So listening to that, it sounds like a classic win-win, doesn't it? On paper, both economies seem to be benefiting hugely from this booming trade.
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
But if that's the case,
Yeah.
why are we talking about a trade storm? Where does the tension come in when the numbers look so good?
And that's exactly the illusion, isn't it? While the figures paint this rosy picture of growth, the reality of trade, especially between major powers, it's just far more complex.
Okay.
It's not just about the volume of stuff being exchanged. It's about the underlying leverage. Who sets the terms? Whose domestic industries face more hurdles? Whose companies find it harder to get into the other market? That's where the tension really starts to build.
So it's about the rules of the game, not just the score.
Precisely. Think about American tech giants eyeing India's massive market. Huge potential, right? But then India brings in new e-commerce rules or insists on data localization, storing data in India. That changes the whole business model, the profit margins. Suddenly, market access isn't so simple.
I see.
Or take India's pharma strength. The U.S. benefits from affordable generics, absolutely. But then you get clashes over intellectual property rights or aligning regulations. It's these non-tariff barriers, regulatory hurdles, the perception of unfair access. That's what turns a seemingly win-win into a point of friction.
Because one side feels like they're not getting the best deal for their national interest.
Exactly. It stops being just about trade volume and becomes about power dynamics, strategic goals, and whose vision for the rules prevails.
Okay, so let's really unpack this storm then. It sounds like a gathered force, maybe particularly under the Trump administration. There was a significant move regarding something called the Generalized System of Preferences, GSP. What was that?
Right, the GSP, that was a U.S. program, started way back in '76. The idea was to help economic development in certain countries by letting some of their products enter the U.S. duty-free.
Okay, like a trade preference.
Exactly. For India, being a GSP beneficiary was a pretty big deal. It meant lots of its exports, think textiles, Some farm goods, handicrafts had a competitive edge in the U.S. market because they weren't hit with the same tariffs as goods from other non-GSP countries. A real boost, especially for smaller Indian businesses.
And then, in 2019, the Trump administration did what?
They revoked India's GSP status, pulled the plug essentially in June 2019.
And the impact.
It was significant. Billions of dollars worth of Indian goods that used to come in duty-free suddenly faced higher U.S. tariffs.
Ouch.
Yeah, it directly hit the competitiveness of those Indian products, eroded their price advantage, caused immediate economic pain for, lots of smaller businesses, farmers back in India. It was a very clear signal. Washington was ready to use its trade leverage to demand more.
So what was the U.S. justification for doing that? What did Washington say they wanted?
Well, the stated reasons focused on wanting what they called more equitable and reciprocal trade. They wanted better market access for American goods and services in India.
Ah, the other direction.
Right. They pointed to high Indian tariffs on things like Harley-Davidson motorcycles, certain agricultural goods. They also pushed for fewer restrictions on American companies operating in India, things like price caps on medical devices or those data localization rules we mentioned.
So the argument was India's economy had grown. It wasn't a developing nation needing special help anymore.
That was part of it. The U.S. argued India was now a major economy, fifth largest by some counts, and didn't need these preferences, and that India's own market barriers were unfairly hurting American businesses, making it a one-way street.
So economic rationale, but maybe part of a broader America First push.
Absolutely. While the immediate reasons were economic, it fit perfectly into the Trump administration's overall strategy of reevaluating all trade deals and demanding better terms for the U.S.
And interestingly, the situation didn't just flip back when the administration changed. The Biden administration came in. But we haven't seen India's GSP status restored, have we?
No, we haven't. And that's quite telling, isn't it?
It suggests a continuity in policy.
It does. It indicates that the underlying U.S. concerns about market access and, let's say, fair trade practices with India, they persist across administrations, regardless of party. The basic expectation from the U.S. side that India should open its markets more hasn't really gone away.
So what are the Biden administration's priorities that keep this pressure on? Is it still just market access, or have things evolved?
Well, the Biden team definitely maintains pressure, but their focus is also shaped by their big Made in America push and a real emphasis on securing U.S. supply chains.
Resilience, that's the buzzword.
Exactly. Especially in critical sectors, semiconductors, pharma, rare earths. So they're looking at trade relationships not just through the lens of bilateral balances, but asking, does this help build a robust, secure American industrial base? So their push for reshoring or friendshoring, bringing manufacturing back home, or to trusted allies that indirectly pressures countries like India. Either align your trade policies to support these U.S. goals or, well, face continued scrutiny.
So the pressure remains, even if the specific GSP lever isn't the main focus right now.
Right. It shows U.S. trade policy is increasingly driven by domestic economic needs and national security thinking. Trade is seen as a strategic tool, not just pure economics. It's about resilience, strategic independence, as well as market access.
And India, naturally, hasn't just sat back and taken this. As a rising power itself, they've pushed back, haven't they? Been quite assertive.
Oh, absolutely. India has taken a distinctly assertive stance. It reflects their growing confidence. In direct response to the GSP removal and other U.S. demands, New Delhi pretty quickly raised its own tariffs on certain American goods.
Tit for tat.
Exactly. Things like almonds, apples, some steel products. Suddenly, American exporters faced higher costs selling into India. It was a clear signal. India won't just concede without pushing back. They'll defend their domestic industries.
And it wasn't just tariffs, right? There were other regulatory moves, especially hitting U.S. tech and e-commerce.
Absolutely. India also tightened its e-commerce rules significantly, and that really impacts big American players there, like Amazon or Walmart's Flipkart.
How so?
Well, these rules often involve things like data localization, forcing companies to store Indian user data within India. That adds major cost and complexity for foreign firms.
Right.
And other rules restrict how foreign-owned platforms can sell products from their own affiliated companies, basically stopping them from offering exclusive deals or deep discounts that might squeeze out local Indian sellers.
So explicitly designed to help Indian businesses compete.
Explicitly, it's about fostering domestic digital champions, ensuring the digital economy benefits Indian entities. It's part of India asserting digital sovereignty, regulating its own fast-growing online market.
And then there's this overarching policy, this economic vision India launched, Atmanirbhar Bharat. That seems to capture this whole assertive, self-reliant approach.
Yes, Atmanirbhar Bharat. It translates powerfully to self-reliant India, and it's hugely significant, much more than a slogan. It's a whole policy framework, a national movement championed by Prime Minister Modi.
What's the core idea?
It prioritizes domestic manufacturing, innovation, supply chain resilience across key sectors. It's India's big drive to become a global manufacturing hub, while, crucially, reducing reliance on imports.
So carrots and sticks, incentives for local companies, maybe more hurdles for foreign ones?
Pretty much. Production-linked incentives for local firms, promoting local sourcing, sometimes stricter standards or more scrutiny for foreign companies wanting in. You see it in defense, a big push for indigenous production, limiting some foreign bias. In electronics, incentives to manufacture in India.
Building national champion.
Exactly. Building an industrial base that can compete globally, not just be a market for foreign goods.
And how does that directly impact the U.S. trade dynamic?
Fundamentally, it means India is perfectly willing to resist American trade demands if they clash with this core goal of fostering strong domestic industries and achieving economic sovereignty. It shows India's determination to chart its own course, even if it causes friction with partners like the U.S. It shifts the whole negotiating landscape.
Okay, so this really brings us beyond just economics, doesn't it? We're firmly in the realm of geopolitics now. The trade friction seems like a symptom of a much larger strategic game being played.
Absolutely.
And one of the biggest pieces on that geopolitical chessboard, maybe the biggest piece, is China. How does the U.S. see India in relation to China? What's the strategic hope there?
You've hit the absolute nail on the head there. From Washington's viewpoint, India is seen as, well, indispensable, a vital counterweight to China in the Indo-Pacific region.
Because of its size.
Location, values, all of the above. As China's economic military tech power grows across Asia and globally, the U.S. desperately needs strong regional partners to maintain some kind of balance, to uphold that rules-based order they talk about.
And India fits the bill.
Uniquely so. Massive population, growing economy, democratic values, which is a key contrast to China and that crucial strategic location, bordering China, commanding key Indian Ocean sea lanes. It's the world's largest democracy. It presents a credible alternative model. For the U.S., leveraging that potential isn't just about trade. It's fundamental to their whole Indo-Pacific strategy.
And what does leveraging actually mean in practice? What does Washington want India to do? What's the ultimate goal?
It's pretty comprehensive. The ambition is to see New Delhi firmly aligned with the U.S. across multiple domains, not just trade.
Like what?
Deep defense cooperation, more joint exercises, intelligence sharing, arms sales to boost interoperability, sharing advanced technology, especially in critical areas, to build a secure tech ecosystem among allies. And crucially, working together on maritime security. Ensuring freedom of navigation in places like the South China Sea, the wider Indo-Pacific vital for global trade. The idea is to build this robust network of democracies. A sort of democratic alliance, maybe, something like that, to collectively push back against what they see as China's assertiveness, its attempts to rewrite the rules, and to safeguard regional stability and shared values.
But it's not that simple, is it? India doesn't just snap into alignment with U.S. goals. They have this long history of strategic autonomy, non-alignment. How does that complicate things?
Ah, yes, and that's where it gets really interesting. It's both a strength and sometimes a source of friction. India definitely values the U.S. partnership. You see it in concrete actions.
Like the Quad.
Exactly. India is an active participant in the Quad with the U.S., Japan, Australia. That's explicitly about a free and open Indo-Pacific. Signals clear alignment on some big strategic goals. They do major joint military exercises too, like Malabar.
There's always a but with strategic autonomy, isn't there?
There is. India is incredibly careful about playing its own cards, maintaining what it fiercely calls strategic autonomy. And what's fascinating here is, even while engaging deeply with the U.S. and its allies, India keeps making independent decisions that don't always thrill Washington.
Like buying Russian oil.
That's a prime example. Despite huge U.S. pressure and sanctions after the invasion of Ukraine, India continues buying large amounts of discounted Russian oil. They cite their energy needs, their long-standing defense ties with Moscow, a very independent move in the current climate.
Hmm.
And look at China. Even with border tensions and rivalry, India still does billions in trade with China. It's also active in groups like BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which include China and Russia. It underscores this commitment to a wider multipolar engagement.
So it's not just about specific deals. It sounds like a deeper philosophy about the world order.
Precisely. If you connect this to the bigger picture, India fundamentally wants a multipolar world, not one led solely by the U.S. or by China, for that matter.
Right.
They see value in partnering with the U.S. to balance China, yes, but they absolutely do not want to be locked into an exclusive alliance with anyone. They envision a world with several major power centers, including themselves, giving them more flexibility, more influence.
It's a defining feature of their foreign policy.
Absolutely. Rooted in their history, their desire to forge their own path. And it raises that big question for both Washington and New Delhi. Can this partnership really deepen with such different views on how global power should be structured? Requires a lot of mutual understanding, maybe tolerance for differences.
That's a huge point.
Yeah.
And it leads us right into another critical area, maybe the defining battlefield for future power: technology.
Oh, yes. Absolutely critical.
This isn't just about today's widgets. It's about who dominates the future, sets the rules, holds the keys to innovation. What are the key tech sectors where this contest is playing out?
We're talking about the absolute frontiers of power. Semiconductor manufacturing, the bedrock of almost everything digital, from phones to AI data centers to military tech. Control the chips, you control innovation.
Okay, semiconductors. What else?
5G networks. The nervous system for modern connectivity. Dictates speed, security, the flow of information, enables smart cities, autonomous vehicles, the Internet of Things.
Huge implications.
Massive. And finally, setting AI standards. Who governs the algorithms, the ethics, the military uses, the rules for how AI is developed and used globally? Dominance here means immense economic leverage, strategic advantage, national security for decades. Stakes couldn't be higher.
And what does the U.S. want from India in this tech race? Just sell them more American tech?
Yeah.
Or is it deeper?
It's much deeper. The U.S. is very clear. It wants India firmly aligned with American tech ecosystems, American standards. And often that means excluding Chinese companies.
Right, the whole Huawei 5G battle was a big example.
Exactly. Encourage India to use U.S.-compatible platforms, join U.S.-led R&D, and crucially, keep Chinese firms out of sensitive infrastructure like 5G, citing national security.
So the goal is to build a secure, sort of democratic tech supply chain.
That's the idea. Bypass competitors, stop rivals' tech from spreading, build collective strength among like-minded partners. Washington sees it as vital for future economic competition and national security, countering China's digital influence.
But again, India walks its own path here too. They don't just automatically adopt the U.S. line.
Indeed. India's position is, again, quite nuanced. It reflects that strategic autonomy. They are cooperative in some tech areas. They have dialogues on critical and emerging tech. They share an interest in resilient supply chains, especially after COVID.
Right.
But they insist on setting their own rules for their domestic tech sector. They'll prioritize their own national security, developing their own industry, their digital sovereignty.
So they might restrict Chinese apps, which aligns with U.S. concerns.
Yes, they've banned hundreds, citing security. That aligns. But when it comes to hardware, like 5G equipment, India's been more cautious about a blanket ban on Chinese vendors.
Why? Cost. Options.
Probably a mix. They prefer rigorous testing, security criteria, rather than just saying, no Chinese tech, only Western. They weigh their own needs cost, availability of alternatives alongside security. They won't just replicate U.S. policy. They make decisions based on India's interests first. Creates a complex landscape for U.S. firms and policymakers.
So it really highlights how domestic factors influence these international relationships. It's not just government-to-government calculations. What's happening inside each country matters hugely.
Absolutely critical, often underestimated.
Let's look at the U.S. side first. What are the internal pressures that make compromising on trade with India, even in their strategic alignment, so tough?
Well, in the U.S., you have this core political reality. Neither Democrats nor Republicans can really afford to look soft on trade, especially not when it comes to protecting American jobs and industries.
It's a bipartisan pressure point.
Very much so, particularly now with globalization, outsourced jobs, manufacturing stability being such hot-button political issues. The mood often leans protectionist.
So it really boils down to protecting American jobs. That's the main driver.
It's a fundamental political necessity. Any trade deal seen as giving too much away to India or anyone else risks serious backlash from voters, especially in those key manufacturing or agricultural states.
Like dairy farmers wanting into India's market, or textile makers fearing imports.
Exactly, those kinds of specific interests. The political cost of not being seen as tough enough or failing to get a great deal for U.S. industries is just very high for politicians. It puts real constraints on negotiators, makes big compromises hard to sell back home. What stands out to you when you think about that? How much domestic politics ties leaders' hands internationally?
Yeah, it's striking. It's clearly not just an economic calculation for them, it's political survival. And it's not just a U.S. thing, right? Prime Minister Modi in India must face equally strong, maybe even stronger, domestic pressures.
Oh, absolutely, if not more so, given India's scale and diversity. Modi, even with a strong mandate, faces huge pressure from powerful domestic groups who are very sensitive to trade policy. It's a complex web of interests to balance, especially with that Atmanirbhar Bharat push.
Can you give examples? Who are the key stakeholders pushing back against opening up to U.S. demands?
Well, farmers are a huge one, an incredibly influential, vocal group in India, politically organized, capable of massive protests. Remember the farm law protests.
Right.
They often fiercely oppose lowering tariffs on farm products, fearing cheaper U.S. imports, apples, dairy, whatever, would just devastate their livelihoods, destabilize the market. For millions, it's about survival.
Okay, farmers. Who else?
Small and medium businesses, SMEs, the backbone of much of the economy, huge employers. They're often very wary of opening markets more to big American corporations, worried they can't compete with the scale of an Amazon or a Walmart. Feared job losses, market erosion.
Well-
And then you also have powerful nationalist groups, the Swadeshi or indigenous movement folks. They champion Make in India, self-reliant India. They want strong protectionism to build domestic industry, reduce foreign reliance, prevent what they see as foreign economic domination.
So all these groups put significant pressure on Modi.
Huge pressure. Makes it politically very difficult for him to agree to terms that look like concessions to U.S. demands, even if those terms might offer some broader benefits down the line. It's a constant balancing act between domestic support and international partnerships.
So what we're really seeing then is this kind of mutual protectionism. Despite all the talk of friendship and strategic ties, both governments are, at core, acting protectionist, driven by their own domestic needs.
That's a really key insight, I think, a critical takeaway. Despite the rhetoric of partnership, both Washington and New Delhi operate with a fair degree of protectionism, and their reasons, their motivations are clear and distinct, reflecting their own national priorities.
So what are those core motivations boiled down when they clash on trade?
For Washington, it's fundamentally about ensuring America's economic and strategic edge globally. Protecting current jobs, yes, but also securing leadership in future tech, maintaining influence through economic strength, getting fair market access for U.S. companies. It's about preserving that superpower status.
Okay. And for New Delhi?
For New Delhi, it's about safeguarding India's own rise. They're determined to reach their potential without becoming dependent on any single partner, including the U.S. So their protectionism aims to foster local capabilities, build self-reliance, create jobs for their huge population, and ensure growth translates into independent geopolitical power.
And those two motivations, while logical for each country, just naturally clash in trade talks.
Often, yes. They clash directly when you get down to the details, creating friction despite the bigger strategic picture where they might agree.
So where does this leave us? Looking ahead, what are the possible paths for this incredibly complex relationship? Feels like it could go a few ways.
Yeah, I think broadly you can sketch out three possible paths for the economic side of things. First is maybe de-escalation, a managed cooling off.
How would that look?
In that scenario, both sides manage to strike a limited trade deal. Focus on specific sectors where compromise is easier, more obviously win-win. Maybe pharma, tech cooperation on cybersecurity, defense manufacturing partnerships.
This they mostly agree on anyway.
Right. Allows both sides to claim a victory, show progress back home, while kicking the can down the road on the really tough stuff like broad agricultural access or big e-commerce rule changes. Tactical wins to ease the tension. Pragmatism.
De-escalation. What if they can't manage that? What's path number two?
That would be prolonged tension, a state of sort of managed friction. The tariffs, the counter-tariffs, they continue. The economic relationship stays strained, ongoing disputes over market access, IP, regulations.
But it doesn't break everything.
That's the key. In this scenario, the overall strategic partnership defense, security cooperation, alignment on China that stays largely intact, maybe even deepens.
So they compartmentalize economic frostiness, but strategic warmth.
Exactly. Trade negotiators stay deadlocked, but the defense folks keep collaborating. An uncomfortable equilibrium maybe, but one both sides might see as necessary to preserve the bigger picture.
And then there's the riskiest path, the one everyone wants to avoid.
That's strategic drift. That's where the unresolved trade fights fester and, crucially, start to spill over. They create broader mistrust, erode cooperation across the board.
So economic friction poisons the well for defense, tech, diplomacy.
Potentially, yes. If it's not managed, it could undermine collaboration everywhere. And the biggest danger there, it creates an opening for China.
How so?
A weakened U.S.-India strategic partnership lets Beijing expand its influence, maybe draw India closer economically via Belt and Road, or just prevent the close U.S.-India alignment needed to balance power in the Indo-Pacific. It undermines Washington's strategy and India's goal of a multipolar world, potentially strengthening China's position.
That sounds bad. But how likely is that drift, really, given how much you said they need each other? Seems like the stakes are too high.
You're right to point that out. Mutual need is strong. So strategic drift is definitely seen as unlikely by most analysts. And it's an important but, it's not impossible.
Okay.
They genuinely do need each other. For the U.S., India is crucial for balancing China, keeping sea lanes open, shaping tech norms. For India, the U.S. offers advanced tech, investment, a powerful security partner, diversifying away from Russia.
So it's a paradox. This deep mutual need doesn't guarantee smooth sailing. It might actually guarantee more arguments because the stakes are so high.
Exactly. Mutual need doesn't mean easy talks. It means the talks will be tough, the negotiations complex, because both sides know exactly what they stand to gain or lose if it falls apart.
Right.
The necessity of the partnership creates pressure to solve problems, but it doesn't eliminate the friction. It means robust discussions, difficult compromises. It's a relationship defined by strategic convergence, but also persistent economic divergence.
So ultimately, how should we judge the success of this relationship going forward? What's the real test?
Well, it won't be judged by whether they have disagreements, because, as we've seen, disagreements are inevitable, natural, even healthy, between two big, complex democracies with their own interests.
So what is the test?
The ultimate test is whether those disagreements can be managed effectively, constructively, without sinking the whole ship. Can they navigate the storms? Can they compartmentalize economic friction from geopolitical needs? That ability to manage friction, find common ground even when things are tough, that will define their success.
This has been a really insightful deep dive. It's clear this India-U.S. relationship, especially the trade part, is so much more complex than it looks. More than just tariffs.
Much more.
It's really a profound test, isn't it? How two large democracies with shared interests but also really different priorities and pressures at home can actually work together in this rapidly changing world.
A test case, in many ways.
The waves, as we said, will keep coming. Global change, national interest. The big question for Washington and New Delhi is whether they can navigate them side by side, recognizing that mutual need, or if they end up, steering in opposite directions.
That's the question indeed.
We hope this deep dive gave all of you listening some new perspectives to think about as you watch this critical relationship unfold. Thanks for tuning in.